So it's remix time. The guys at Krafted Records have sent me this really interesting tune by a producer called Jon Towell. You can find him on SoundCloud. And they've asked me to do a remix. Now, I've done a lot of remixes in my time under my previous artist name of Sick and also the name of Rate and Follow. And I love a remix. I won't deny I get a lot of pleasure from doing remixes. I think primarily because you don't have to be creative straight from the start, if that makes sense. You don't have to find that initial idea. You have something that you can work with. But of course, you can put your own stamp and your own identity onto a track that already exists. It also normally has to be done to a time frame as well. So there's a bit of pressure to get this done. And I always think that's absolutely a good thing. If a label says to me, Dan, you've got 2 or 3 weeks to do this, then I've got to get it done. Whereas other original tracks, you know, they can take months, if not years, to get finished, which I'm sure all producers out there can identify with. So I just wanted to show you the process of how I go about my initial ideas of a remix, why I love Bitwig, particularly for remixing, as you'll see why in a minute. And let's just see where we go for half an hour. Can't promise anything. It might turn out to be brilliant. Might turn out to be a bag of shit. I'm hoping it's going to be the former. And let's see how it goes. So to save a bit of time, what I've done is I have imported the stems. I have to say, really grateful to John, who has sent across the master track. Every stem exported. I mean, there are a lot there, which is great. He's also exported groups as well as individual stems. Anyone who's preparing a project for remix, look and learn. This is the way to produce stems for your remix artist. This is just beautiful. So thank you very much. We also have some MIDI as well. Very, very rarely do I get a remix project where the MIDI file is included, and you'd think that would be so fundamental. Save me having to work out the key it's in, for example, or having to try and reproduce the bass line or the lead. Now, I'm not going to say I'm going to use it, but having it is really, really helpful. So thank you very much. I am super, super grateful. So I have dragged the stems in. I've worked out it's at 125 BPM. I'm not time stretching anything. All I've done is change the metronome. So let's have a listen back to what we've got to play with. So I'm instantly looking for things that catch my attention. There was that little sort of electric noise, which I quite like. So I've got to find where that is. I think it's possibly that one. Yep. So what I would do, this is my process. I'm going to zoom in. And I'm just instantly going to just trim that using Command E. And that's just going to give me a little clip that I can drop into another project a bit later on. So let's skip about, see what else we've got. So I can hear this really nice sort of vocal loop going on, which I think is around somewhere. I found it. So it's this vocal groove sting. Now, this is the kind of instance where I want to rename this for myself. So this is going to be vocal chop, sort of rhythm. So I'm assuming that's the same. Okay, so there's some variety in there, but let's take 16 bars of it, for example. Let's trim that down. Let's go a little bit later on into the track. That's really nice. Let's do that. So that's reverb vox. I like capitals, so I'm just going to rename these. So we've got these cool little glitch noises. Very nice. So I'm going to trim that. I like trimming it down to bars because I find working with 2 or 4 or 6 or 8 bar length clips much easier than individual samples. Let's see what else we've got. Okay, leave that alone for the moment. Let's find some percussions. That's quite cool. Let's do 4 bars of that or 8 bars of that. Okay, so again, we trim that down. What else we got? I'm not worried about the more repetitive notes at the moment. I'm looking for other elements. We've got this low Euclidean. We'll probably make use of that at some stage. Kicks and hats. Let's see what we've got on the hats territory. Sometimes I normally put my own percussion in, but it's sometimes useful to utilize something that already exists. Okay, that's quite nice. So let's just take 4 bars of that. So we've got hats. We've got this grind synth. What have we got here? Okay, that's quite a lead element, so I would call that for me like a lead synth. Then we've got some glitches. What's this one? Maybe I've actually used this one. Yeah, I think that's the one I did earlier. Some claps, some bass. I'm not going to touch those. 16th hats, let's have a listen to those. Quite a nice pattern, so again we might use that. Again, I don't always want to rewrite everything. It's useful to use some of the elements that already exist because then there becomes familiarity with the original. And I'm not going to look at kicks because I pretty much always want to put my own kick in, to be perfectly honest. So let's just have a listen back.
Orlando, choreographer, dancer.
So we've obviously also got this big sample.
To him, you talk to me. And who might you be? Orlando, choreographer, dancer.
I am probably going to use
dancer.
That. So let's trim that. We can rename that here as well, which is really handy. So we can call that dancer.
Dancer. Ah. So
now the is quite fun as well. So let's also take that.
Ah. So this bit of amateur dancing that my class was so privileged to witness. Ah.
I'm probably not going to use...
Come on, man. Let's get out of here. But since we're all here...
I'm not going to use the whole speech.
You owe me $7, man. Yeah. For teaching you how to dance, sucker.
Quite like that as a bit of Foley. So let's take that. We'll call that laugh. And I think there was this bit as well. And then that will probably do.
For teaching you how to dance, sucker.
So let's call that sucker. Okay, so I've got various elements that I'm happy to work with. So this is where Bitwig really comes into its own, in my opinion, is the joy of working with a second project. So one of the things I found that's really useful when you're going to drag and drop audio between projects is, particularly if you're working with long samples like this, is to bounce the sample in place first, or that clip first. So you're not dragging across or copying across an entire 6 minutes worth of audio, which can then get a bit messy when you're time stretching. So I'll show you what I mean by that. If I take these hats, for example, let's activate the engine and play this back. Okay, if I copy this into here, what will happen is that all of the events either side of it are still going to be present, and that just makes the stretching a bit more challenging. So the best thing to do is, when you've got your loop, bounce it in place. And what that's going to do, if we delete everything either side, you will see that there is no audio. So you're now working with just that pure bit of 4-bar audio. Let's rename it. And then let's drop it in. And we should hear, when we come back to it, that this is going to be a much better stretch. Let's also find a couple of other bits that we were working with. So there was the vocal. So here we go, this bit here. Choppy rhythm. So 16 bars, let's bounce that in place. Cool. And then let's drag that one in there. And what else did we have? I think we also had this. So I'm not so worried about stretching that, so I can always rework that or reposition it. Or actually, I will bounce it in place just to be safe. So I don't want the rest of it in there. And we also have, we'll do a kick just as a test. So let's bounce that in place just to give us a guide. Cool. So this is all the housework you need to do to keep this nice and tidy. We also had these 2 vocal samples. So again, let's bounce those in place. Let's drag them in. Might even put those on a sampler. We'll come on to that in a bit. So I think that will probably do for the moment. I will get, we'll get the bass in here. Again, just as a reference. So that fades up a bit. And interestingly, let's take that off. So let's bounce it. Let's grab it from here to there. Let's split it. Let's bounce it in place. There we go. And then let's drop it in. So fingers crossed, when we now activate this engine, we may need to do a bit of stretching, but I'm now working at 128. Okay, so I've got something to play with now. So you can see the benefit of just that little bit of work beforehand. So all of these are stretched or stretch HD. And now I can sort of really start to have a play and have a think about what I want to do. Now, one of the things I always do is have load up mixed in key. And mixed in key is going to very kindly tell me what key the bass is in, for example. So if we have a listen back. So we're using D, G, G minor is what it's looking at. Okay. Cool. So one of the things I might start experimenting with now is looking at a melody that's going to look at D minor but using perhaps a different bass sound. So, and maybe something a bit tougher. I'm also going to look at some tougher kicks. I'm not going to work with this kick. This is a bit proggy for me. So, this is where Loopcloud really sort of comes into its own. It's got all of my samples in there already. I can, of course, go and find and browse forever for sample kicks, but I don't really want to do that. Let's make life easier. So we're going to have a look for some kicks. And kick, I should say, and we'll look for some techno. We're going to look for some loops. So we can also choose the key. So we know that this is in, what was it? G minor. So we can consider, do we want the key on the G? Or I'm just looking at my keyboard now. Do we want to find a kick that sits out away from the G, so the bass has its own space? So maybe we could have a play with something like a D, for example, a D kick. Well, let's have a listen and just see what works. So I need to load up the Loopcloud plugin. And again, like I said, we can choose our key. So let's choose something like D. Let's see what we find. Wow, okay. Well, something a bit sort of rumbly like that would be quite nice. Quite savage. That's quite nice. One thing I want to do just to get a better sense of what's going on, this this choppy rhythm, I'm going to increase the audio on this. It's very quiet, as you can see. So let's gain it up a bit. And just for fun, let's duplicate this. Okay, I'm not sure that is the kick, so let's see what else there is. Whoa. That's quite nice. So if I like it, I might just favourite it and come back to it. Ooh. That's a good contender as well. Yeah, these are getting quite savage. I'm going to just go, I think, with that second one. So yes, I'm going to buy it. Thank you very much. Let's drop it in here. So this is going to need a stretch. So let's stretch HD. Boy. Now actually one thing I need to get better at practicing and reminding myself is not to adjust the fader levels here, but actually to use Tool. So Tool is a much cleaner way of doing this, because you can obviously then automate this. And if you wanted to copy and paste that automation, or copy and paste this device and automate other tracks in the same way, then you're copying the tool rather than drawing in all the automation again. So this is a really handy way of working. Okay, and I might even decide to, let's up this up in the tempo a bit. Cool. So we had this bass. Now this is where I could go and find a bass melody in Loopcloud, But personally, I don't think it's cheating, but I like melodies to come from synths and to give a bit more control. And where I may cheat with this is using Scalar 2, and Scalar 2 giving me some creative ideas. So I'm going to create a new track. I'm going to load up Scalar, which I just think if you don't have it, this is just the best tool for coming up with a bit of writer's block and coming up with some original melodies and ideas that you wouldn't have thought about maybe producing. We're going to work, I think it was in G, I think we said, was it G minor? I think it was G minor. Let's go back and check mixed in key. Let's check our bass. Yep. Okay. So let's mute that and come back to Scalar. So it was G minor. And now I need to add a synth onto this. So got lots and lots of synth options. Let's find something in the list we can always flick through. Or I can obviously also work with a with a synth engine. So we could find, I mean, I love the Arturia stuff at the moment. So let's have maybe something like the Matrix or the Core. Let's do the MS-20. Let's see what we come up with. Not saying this is going to work, but no, go away. Let's have a play. So what I need to do now is drop some notes in, and we can change the scale as well, the octave, sorry. Put it on loop, right click on play to sync it. Okay, that's not what we want, obviously. So now we're going to go into performance mode, and we're going to choose a type of performance that we want. So we're going to want bass. And we can choose different rhythms. Definitely the one. I will save it at this point. So I would then potentially go back to my Loopcloud, and I'm going to now look for some hats. Get rid of the kick. See if there's anything a bit tougher in here that I like. Don't necessarily need it in G, but let's see what we got. That's nice. I like the fact it gives you a little bit of a shaker at the start, which is quite cool. So let's buy that one. Thank you very much. Let's drop it in. Do we need to stretch it? Yes, we do. So stretch. And I know you can set it in the Bitwig settings that if you want to, in the behavior, it will automatically stretch samples. I personally don't like doing that because it sometimes does it when I don't want it to. So I think it's Control on a Mac or Alt on a Mac, and that will just stretch it for us. It's just so much cleaner when I get it right. Why is that going wrong? 128. So it needs to be faster. My mistake. Whoops. Daniel, what are you doing? Sorry. Okay, that's not quite right. That should be to there. Maybe it's a slightly off loop. So I'm just looking at the transient lines in Bitwig. Okay, let's try this again. So maybe I was a bit too hasty bigging up. Let's get rid of that. Is that going to fix it? Oops. Okay, this one's being a pain in the ass, so I'm going to ignore that one for the moment. Okay, again, let's try a different one. I've got so many credits, it really doesn't matter if I buy them or not, and who knows, I may use them in another project. That's looking a bit more likely. Stretch it, and we want to make it a bit quicker. Not convinced by that either at the moment, so I'll come back to that a bit later on. So what have we got so far? We've got what I could do is now duplicate this. Let's get rid of the Korg and let's find another synth. So what do we have here? Let's have a look for, well, to be honest with you, using the analog lab is often helpful. I'm trying to think, sometimes thinking of the sound that you want is not, I love the Oberhausen, so let's go with that. So we can hear it playing the same melody here, but in fact, I can now choose something different. So rather than a bass line, I might go for something like a phrase, which can tend to go a bit more classical. Let's just turn this down for a moment. That's quite nice. So let's find a patch. See what we got. Something synth leady. And let's just bring in some other elements.
Dancer.
So again, need to think about this, find some placement. And again, one thing I like to do, if I know that's exactly how I want it, is consolidate it. And then I've got the full sample that I can now bring back to here. So I don't have to find that exact mark in the track, if that makes sense. Or the exact sort of division of the bar. this means I can just copy that whole block. So one thing I might now do is on the where is it? The chop rhythm. So it's quite low down and filtered, and there's a great tool on the, I think it's the Arturia, it's one of the delays, I think it's Eternity, and it is called, that's the one. It's these speaker ones are really, really nice. So again, the joy of Bitwig is if we don't like a particular synth, we want to try something else, just mute it, load up another one. Let's try the Arturia lab. So this is all the experimental phase at the moment. I'm not saying this is right or wrong. And some bits I'm probably going to drop. Some things I might change. Some things I might keep. Let's see. So let's have a look for some bass. And maybe we want some, what should we have? Tropical house bass, that could be interesting. Actually, to be honest with you, I really like that one, and I really like that Doctor Who bass. So that's where I might stick with the original hi-hats. I know I was playing around with some earlier. See, it's messing around and experimenting and finally settling on something that works. Don't always settle for the very first thing. Let's save that. Maybe we could go back to the original and then see if there's something that we want to grab. So I know there was some, and I think a good thing at this stage is to delete stuff now that you know you're not going to use and be a bit ruthless. So I'm not going to use this drums group because I want the separate parts. The synth group and again the bass group I'm not going to use. There are these groove elements, so let's have a listen to these. Okay, so that feels like it's a worthy motif to use and it has that boing in there. So let's take that. What are we going to do? Bounce in place. Call that, rename it. So groove element 1. We're going to stick that in there as a new track. Make sure that is stretched, which we can see it is. And let's find another element as well. I think there was the Euclidean stuff could be quite interesting. I feel like we've got to be using these little repeats and trills because we've got to pay homage to the original. Okay, quite a lot going on there. So let's go with 32. Well, we'll just take a chunk of it. Let's get 16 bars, so up to 49. Do that. Let's bounce in place. And let's drop that in here. And let's see if these add anything that we do want to work with. So we'll mute that for the moment. Let's mute that Oberhausen. Let's just see what that sounds like. Okay, so let's whack it up because it's very quiet. Cool. Now, again, another amazing tool for remixing is Shaperbox, which I'm sure you would have heard of. There's a new one out now with the reverb, which I've downloaded, but I've not installed it yet. So let's get some volume pumping in there. And one of the things that I've really loved recently is actually the drive element, which is really nice for picking up different hits. So it can just detect. And this grip bit just brings it back a bit. Liking that. Let's maybe mix it a bit. Now, one very quick tip, if you don't have Shaperbox and you want to do some really simple sidechain compression, let's mute the volume so you can see this in effect. You can use one of the modulators. So if we did audio sidechain, we're going to select what that is, and that's going to be the kick, which is, where is it? Must be that one. You can see it picking it up there. Now I always turn this up, which is the gain of it. And now we click on this and we bring the volume down, and that is going to pump it. And you can set the rise and fall. So whereas Shaperbox will be a continuous sidechain, obviously when the kick drops out, the sidechaining here is going to disappear. So again, that's really, really handy. So I think that should be happening for about there. We've got to find the right point. Very nice. I don't think I want the rest of that really. Again, we would gain this up a bit. Quite like that there, so I think that'd probably be better there. Now this is to me now starting to shape into a really nice idea. I would probably at this stage, I like getting into the 8-bar groove, to be honest. I don't shy away from that. I would probably find some rides. So let's have a look for some rides. Don't have to be techno rides either. So they don't have to be in G. So sometimes rides in different genres, like house rides, can be lovely sometimes. But we'll see what there is in techno. Maybe melodic techno instead. I didn't hear it had a little clap in there. Okay, that's quite handy. Let's stretch that. It's really misbehaving today. A beefy kick. So, you know, this is going to require a lot of work in terms of EQ and side chaining. There is a lot of low end there. So I would just initially and at some point probably add track spacer as well. Let's just do that just to see how it sounds. So I'm going to use my kit. Not the top, more the low energy. Hear that cutting through. I think that Obenhausen is clashing a bit. And again, one of the really nice tools that's come of late is the Arturia filters, especially the M12. That to me is a world of difference. Again, this is where I just start to just trim the low end a bit of things to start giving some space. And I think The last thing we'll do is on these samples. We had this one. Well, these two. I can't remember if we dropped them in, so let's drop them in again. Maybe we did. Let's boost these up. Let's drag this up to here. So it's kind of a bit of an odd Foley background. Definitely adds a little something. Let's duplicate that and get the laughter in there as well, or the sucker. Why can't I hear that? I'm guessing.
You got it.
Whoa, sorry about that.
You got it. You got it. Don't you show it what you got. Don't you show it what you got. Don't you show it what you got.
Anyway, that's going to be the fun part, playing around with these vocals. But in about half an hour, 40 minutes, we've come up with a groove that I think actually works really well. And it's a mixture of sounds that we found on Loopcloud and also sounds that we've generated ourselves through synths. Because I don't want to be totally sample based, and of course synths give us a lot more freedom. If we listen back to the original, let's see how different it sounds. We soloed. So I will probably leave that alone for now, because this is going to get stuck in my head. And that's what I want. I want to kind of be immersed in this track now for the next 24, 48 hours and think about it, take it away, come back to it, start shaping it and structuring it. And that's what we're going to have a look at in the follow-up video to this, when I've come up with a structure and talk about the decisions behind that. So I hope you found this useful. I know it can be strange and perhaps a bit frustrating watching someone go through a creative process, but we all go through it. And I hope it's given you some ideas as to how you can approach a remix. Thanks for watching.